Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. A day after governors of Tamil Nadu and Kerala were at the center of controversies over their respective addresses to the assemblies, Karnataka Governor Thawar Gehlot now has followed suit by refusing to address the joint session of the state legislature, which was scheduled for Thursday. Now, parts of the governor's address to the joint session on Thursday are said to contain certain references to the center, which has repealed UPA's Manrega and replaced it with VBG Ramji Act, due to which Governor Gehlot has refused to deliver his address. Now, Gehlot has raised reservations on 11 paragraphs in the speech, which was drafted by the Karnataka cabinet with regards to the NDA repealing Manrega. Now, what the sources are saying that the governor is mandated to address the session as per Article 176(1) of the Constitution. Now, he insists on skipping parts of the speech using his discretion. Now, they said as parts of the address were against the VBG Ramji bill, which has become an act after the bill was passed in Parliament, it would be unconstitutional to speak against it, and he preferred to skip those parts. Now, it's not that it's only Tawarchand Gehlot has done this. Similar things were tried by the Tamil Nadu Governor, Mr. Ravi, who walked out of the assembly, and what the statement which was put out from his office was that the national anthem was insulted, that the alleged speech contained various inaccuracies and unsubstantiated claims. Now, for example, they say that the speech contains numerous unsubstantiated claims and misleading statements regarding the national anthem. Then they've spoken about how there are certain wrong facts which have been put out, and similar things have been seen in the Kerala Assembly as well, where what exactly the Kerala governor has done. Governor Rajendra Arlekar, he read out the policy address for nearly 2 hours, but soon after his speech, Chief Minister took over and pointed out that the governor had made changes to certain paragraphs which were approved by the Council of Ministers. So here the question is that can the governor use his discretion to skip certain parts of the address? Now, this is a joint address to the legislature. Now, can he use his discretion? Uh, and is this a deliberate strategy? Because first we see Tamil Nadu, then Kerala, and now Karnataka. Now, is this a deliberate ploy to antagonize the opposition ruled states? That is one thing. Then another thing is that if this is the kind of deadlock which exists, should the governor's office be abolished? What is the use of this kind of politics? So we'll try and discuss all of this. Joining me this evening is senior journalist and political commentator Javed Ansari. Thank you so much, Javed, for joining. We have Pranav Sachdeva, who is a Supreme Court lawyer. He deals with the issues around the Constitution. Thank you so much, Pranav, for joining. And I'll begin with Javed. Javed, what would you really say to this defiance by the governors? Is this deliberate? First, we see Tamil Nadu, then Kerala, and now it's Tawarchand Gehlot, who's the Karnataka governor.
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind, not an iota of doubt, that all these governors are acting in concert. They've been instructed to act, they're acting in the manner they have been instructed to act by their political masters. It is sad, it's a very poor reflection, because the state government and the governor are, are supposed to work in conjunction, to work in tandem, they're not supposed to have an adversarial relationships. What started off with Mr. Ravi, with Mr. Arif Mohammad Khan as Kerala governor, it was picked up by Mr. Ravi, and now it appears others are also. The fear is that this will soon become the norm. You can't undermine a state government. You have a certain constitution framework within which governors have to function, and I'm afraid this doesn't strengthen democracy. This will yet again, underscore the kind of mistrust, the kind of disdain that an average person these days has about Parliament, about our politicians. This will do nothing. Slowly but surely, one by one, all the institutions, the legitimacy, of all our institutions is being eroded. This is one of the recent examples.
No, but do you feel that the office of the governor, of course, you like you said, that there is no doubt that this office is being used politically, but like what you pointed out, that this is slowly becoming a norm. Now, do you feel that the Modi government perhaps may be trying to devise a totally new paradigm framework for the governors? Like what we used to say, that a governor's post is ceremonial. Now it's not ceremonial anymore, which is very, very clear. They are indulging into brazen politics. And so is there an effort by the government to completely change the paradigm of the functional paradigm of the governors, Javed?
Yes, the governors now have become taken on a more activist role, have taken on an act than at any time before. In the last 40 or 45 years that I have been covering politics, I have not seen governors uh, be such active political agents of the government in the center. And like I said, like the Canadian Prime Minister said in a totally different context yesterday, that the old order is giving way. We are now There's a new order in place. So this he said it in a different context, but it's applicable as much to what is happening in here as well, back home as well. Just look at the way, governors are finding fault with opposition ruled governments. They don't find anything wrong with what the governments that are ideologically aligned with the central government are concerned. Their objection is only to what state governments ruled by opposition parties are saying. This is really, I mean, one by one, each institution is being eroded. Its legitimacy is being undermined. I mean, it's a
No, but
sad day.
there's another thing. Like the Supreme Court, came up on the presidential reference with regards to the bills. Now, do you think that now there'll be a separate case altogether, or a separate petition altogether, exclusively for the addresses, the governor's addresses, or the how they address the joint session of the legislatures?
The Supreme Court has in the past pulled up the gentleman whose visuals we are seeing right now on
Yeah,
our screens.
yeah,
Mr. Ravi, Governor Ravi, has been given a rap on the knuckles earlier by the Supreme Court. But whether or not Supreme Court intervenes, I'm not so sure if they do it suo moto. Some of the at least one state government somebody will have to petition the Supreme Court, and
right,
perhaps our learned lawyer friend, will be able to enlighten us more. But
yeah.
it doesn't. This is not. I mean, it doesn't make for happy reading, happy viewing. This is a
Right.
very poor reflection.
Right. So, Pranav, I'll come to you now. Now, if you look at the things in the legal framework, what we are told is that the governor is mandated to address the session as per Article 176(1) of the Constitution. But he is using his own discretion to skip certain parts of the speech. Now, does this Article 176(1), does it allow the governors to skip certain portions of the speech which he has to deliver?
I don't think so, because ultimately the governor has to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. The constitution makers, Dr. Ambedkar, they were absolutely clear that they don't want a parallel a center of power other than the elected government. See, elected government is the responsible for making policies, and they have a right to address the legislature annually. So a governor has to ultimately, decisions are taken in the name of the governor. The speech is read out by the governor, but it is the speech of the elected government. The policies are of the elected government. So the governor should not have any discretion. There is no discretion provided, and several judgments of the Supreme Court are absolutely clear. Only in very, very limited spheres the governor can have some leeway, but like in imposition of president's rule, etc., where he can give a report, independent report. But in other matters, he has to absolutely act on the aid and advice of the elected government. The law
And
on
what
that
would
is
you, Pranav, what would you say to this kind of a deadlock where the governors are defiant, they refuse to address the joint session just because they certain parts of the speech which is prepared by the state cabinet is not amicable to them, or they don't like certain portions, or probably it doesn't favor the government. That is why, or it's critical of the government, which is the central government, which is why they refuse to address. Now, what would you say to this kind of a deadlock if you have to look at the things constitutionally and from the legal prism?
Yeah, see, so there are two ways to look at it. One is the larger perspective, as Mr. Ansari rightly pointed out, whether it is sitting on bills for several years, using the governors for your political gains, and trying to form the governments and favor certain parties which are like BJP, etc. So one is that. The other is that though the governor has to read out the full speech, but it is also incumbent on the government not to make the speech political, because this is an address to the legislature. It is normally to on the policies of the government which you propose to take, or the steps that you have taken. You may have your speech lauding yourself, but so certain portions the governor has a right to sit with the chief minister and to say that, well, we should discuss this. I don't feel comfortable saying all this because this is a political speech. But governor should not be making corrections that this data is not correct. I was reading one news that the governor is saying that you have given wrong statistics. So all that is not the job of the governor. But the larger picture is, ever since
No,
this
but can I
Modi
interrupt you
government
here?
has.
Can I interrupt you here? In
Yes,
case of Karnataka governor, now this governor is saying that
yes,
11 paragraphs should be dropped from the speech, and we will consult the chief
yes,
minister and communicate to the governor. Now, what the Karnataka government
yes.
now is saying that we can modify certain portions, but we will not drop the speech. Now this kind of an insistence on the part of the governor, how far is it justified?
It's not justified at all, because even if you are critical of a central legislation, you have a right to be critical. If your finances are being cut, the government has a right to place it before the legislature, all the constraints it is facing and all the policies which it thinks is run contrary to its agenda. So the governor's action in that would be completely unconstitutional. But it would not be possible for the court in this kind of a situation to rectify it, because this is essentially proceedings before the legislature. Because
Hmm.
then it would be excessive judicial interference, in which is essentially the domain of the legislature. It is a political issue. The governor definitely is acting unconstitutional, but there may not be a legal remedy to that, as opposed to something like where the governor was sitting on bills for years altogether, and the Supreme Court said no, you have to clear them, and they are deemed to be cleared. So or even if you look at the larger picture of federalism in the country, like for example, states being turned into union territories overnight, like in Kashmir or Ladakh. So the larger picture is that since 2014, as Mr. Ansari said, there is an assault on the institutions, and there is an assault on federalism also. So this governor being used is a pawn in that larger scheme of things of the central government to not allow any independent agency to operate. Now, one fact which will make things clear is that in the presidential reference you talked about, there were at least 10 states which supported the stand of the central government before the Supreme Court, saying governor should have absolute discretion, and the opposition states were opposing the stand of the central government. So, how can an elected state government engage a council to appear before the Supreme Court and say that the governor will have complete discretion to sit over the bills which my legislature is passing? So,
Yeah.
the very fact that the central government could arrange and get state governments to back its stand in the court against their own interest, means the federalism has been destroyed by one ruling party.
True. Right. So, Javed, what Pranav just explained, and if you look at the sequence of events, now this Karnataka governor case, this is a third gubernatorial controversy in 2 consecutive days, and that too happening in the non-BJP ruled states. So, do you see a larger design? What Pranav was hinting at, that this is all part of a bigger design, perhaps from the central government, how they want to completely blight out federalism, how they don't want any independent agencies. But if I may enlarge the scope of the question, what happens to the governor's office now in this kind of a deadlock where the governors are insistent where they shouldn't be, they are behaving unconstitutionally at the behest of the central government? So what happens to the governor's office? Is it now, I mean, the end goal is to make it as political as it can be, or the end goal would be that probably if some petition and all is filed, can we also see the abolition of the governor's office? I mean, that's something far-fetched, but would the parties not start thinking on that line?
Look, no political party can claim innocence or can claim not to have misused the office of the governor. So I don't think there will be a unanimity on this issue. Most parties have done it, depending on when they've been in power, they've done it to varying degrees. So I don't see this post of governor being demolished. The political parties very conveniently adopt positions depending on where they stand. So that won't happen. What you will see and what we are witnessing now is increasingly the office of the governor becoming a puppet on a string. The remote is in somebody else's hand, and we know in whose hand. Earlier, it was done once in a while, and it was done very sparingly. Now, this appears to, in the opposition ruled states, this appears to have become the norm. Unsettle, needle the government, adopt a confrontationist posture, be obstructionist, don't allow them, because the governor can, throw a spanner in the works on a lot of issues. So therefore, he can delay things. He can sit, like Pranav was saying, citing the example, he can sit on bills, not give his assent, send it to the president, use the rule book, to make life difficult for the state government. So that will continue, and opposition ruled states will have to factor in this as they go about things.
No, but then in that case, Javed, the federal governance, that becomes a casualty. And also the big question,
it already is a casualty. It's already casualty.
But what is really, I mean, with a kind of frequency, these kind of controversies are now coming up with the governor's offices. What is the current character of the governor's office? I think we and you would be able to explain it better, that what is really happening to the character of the governor's post, which everyone says it's ceremonial. They are supposed to be acting at the aid and advice of the cabinet ministers, but that's not happening. And like what you pointed out, that he's a puppet in the hands of the political parties. So ultimately, what is the governor's office reduced to?
What we are witnessing is the increasing, almost by the day, the increasing politicization of this office, which was designed to be neutral. The governor's role is like a neutral umpire,
Yeah.
He was supposed to have that calming influence. But now they're taking sides depending on their political affiliations. And once the governor's office becomes a party to a political dispute, then the very purpose for which it was set up is compromised. So increasingly, there will be what we'll see is greater confrontation. What we'll see is more and more obstructionism, and perhaps maybe once when things get really bad, only then will they probably get better. But for now, I don't see any change happening.
Right. So legally, how does one handle this kind of a situation, Pranav, that will we see the political parties, and now in the cases of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka, will the political parties rush to the court with a petition challenging this kind of a behavior of the governor? How do you see it unfolding, and can it be challenged in the court now?
See, I don't think they will rush to court because the court's record itself in protecting federalism has not been so strong. You had a categorical judgment in Tamil Nadu case that the governor will decide the bill in a time frame that has now been on the request of the petition by the central government, that the timeline is now taken away. You had Kashmir being reduced to a union territory despite promises being made. It has not been given statehood. Supreme Court has stayed silent, and governors have been misused in toppling governments and giving power to other parties which are not in majority. So a court's record itself in protecting federalism it has been poor. So therefore, I don't think in this kind of a matter any party will be rushing to court here in this situation. And the courts also, the here is not a case where it is easy for the courts to intervene, because this is an address to the legislature, and proceedings before the legislature are considered sacrosanct away from the judicial review, unless there is some voting taking place, etc., like a passage of bill or some motion or being passed, or some the government's formation being decided. Here is not such a case. This is only an address. So the governor ideally has to follow the constitution, but the governors are therefore the post itself has become redundant, because
Right.
under the constitution it was envisaged it is akin to president. You don't imagine president not editing the speech, or not passing the bills passed by the union government, or not acting on the aid and advice of the union government. If a president starts acting on the aid and advice of a third entity, the union
Right.
government will not be able to function. So governor ideally had the same role under the constitution, but it
Right.
has been misused, and the courts have actually not protected federalism, in my opinion.
Right. One more quick point, Pranav, and then I'll go to Javed. That in the case of Tamil Nadu, say for instance, in that particular speech which Mr. RN Ravi was supposed to read out, there was a certain paragraph which said that there is a steady decline in standards of education and widespread mismanagement in educational institutions, adversely affecting the future of our youth. More than 50% of faculty positions are vacant for years, and guest faculty are restive all over. Our youth is staring at an uncertain future. It does not seem to bother the government, and the issue is totally bypassed. Now, uh, this probably was a statement which was considered to be not in good taste by the governor. So is it also an issue, of course, how the governor is behaving unconstitutionally, but it is also about why do you redact certain portions of the speech which is a will of the state government, which is a will of a duly elected government? Is a duly elected state government not supposed to voice out the concerns of the people? After all, it is the concerns of the people of the state. So is that also not an issue from from the prism of which we should look at things? Yes, Pranav.
Yes, absolutely. Because a governor's speech is the will of the elected government. The elected government takes all the decisions in the name of the governor. All the contracts are signed in the name of the governor. The communications are issued in the name of the governor. So that's how the executive power is vested in the governor in the constitutional sense. But ultimately, it is the elected government which has to have its way. So therefore, for the governor to say, I will not, I will apply my own mind, and I am going to take a decision what should go into my speech, is not the way forward. The governor can obviously, if it is a completely political point, then it should not, that the governor can say, well, you can say it yourself. Why do you want to use me? for scoring your political point. So that I believe the state governments are also they have to be responsible in that way, that the speech has to be politically neutral. It should relate to policies of the state government. You can comment on the central legislation as far as it impacts you, but the governor should not be applying its mind line by line and saying that I don't agree with this, I want to take a contrary stand, or this paragraph should be deleted. Then you are becoming a rival power center in the state government, which is completely impermissible.
Right. Javed, I'm just trying to take a leaf of what we read yesterday about a journalist in Jammu and Kashmir, Basharat Masood, the Indian Express journalist, who wrote a normal report which any journalist would do, taking political reactions, but he was told that he made a mistake for which he was made to sign a bond. Now, that was a journalist case. But here, what is happening, I just quote certain things about how the things have gone about in the Kerala Assembly. Now, say, for example, in his speech, the Kerala governor said that let's avoid the sentence from the 12th paragraph. Now, what is the sentence which they are trying to avoid? I'm going to quote: despite having achieved such social and institutional gains, Kerala continues to face a severe financial strain as a result of the union government's continued adverse measures that weaken the constitutional principles of fiscal federalism. Now, this particular line, Governor Arlekar did not want to read out. And he said, you please remove this sentence from the 12th paragraph of the speech. Now, does it mean, and the larger message, of course, is that if you are criticizing the central government, there is no scope of me reading it out, whether you have approved it or not. Means you can't be critical of the central government or the Modi government at all. Yes, Javed.
Yes, it would appear so. This is a classic case. Look, while the general understanding, I am not so sure if there is a written rule, but the general understanding is that an address by the president or by the governor enunciates, reads out, underscores, underlines the policy positions of the government, whether it is the central government or the state government. And it is expected of governments to talk of policy, not of politics, not to use this as an occasion for point scoring. But the same is true of governors as well. And therefore, to make a public issue out of it, maybe a quiet word, the same thing maybe could be stated in a different way. A quiet word could have sorted this issue out, but that the intent is not to sorting this issue out. The intent is point scoring. The intent is to put down the state government, and hence you see to use the office of the governor to put down the state government and to undermine the state government, and that's why you're seeing these issues. I had never heard of all this earlier. I'm a bit surprised with this kind of activism that is on display on the part of the governors.
Well, Javed, before I close the program, so how is this going to really end up? Is this kind of a thing going to continue? Now there are elections in the states. There'll be maybe the opposition parties, they return to power in the respective state governments, whether it is Tamil Nadu, whether it is Kerala. So do you think that there is an electoral compulsion also behind the governors behaving in this manner? We have the elections around the corner in Tamil Nadu and Kerala.
There is absolutely a political compulsion. The political intent is as clear as daylight. And it's not just in states which are about to go to polls. It's also in other opposition ruled states where elections are not due anytime soon. Yeah. The whole effort is, the whole aim is to try and undermine, to be obstructionist, to create problems in the way of the smooth functioning of the state governments, and therefore this is being done. There is absolutely no, and I'm not so sure if these governments are re-elected, if these parties come back to power, that we'll see an end to this. Right. I'm not so sure. The intent is to undermine. The intent is to obstruct their functioning. So this will continue. It will only cease if the powers that be at the center realize that this is not paying political dividends, that this is not getting the kind of results, or that this is not going down kindly with the populace, then perhaps there may be a change. Otherwise, I don't see any change. The
Okay, so Pranav,
likelihood of a change anytime soon, I don't see.
right. So Pranav, your closing comments on this, that do you see this issue coming to the court, maybe in the Supreme Court?
See, court is difficult because if you saw how they undermined the Delhi government when the opposition party was in power, for 5 years they did not let it function, and the court actually gave judgments in favor of the elected government, but allowed them to continue in their ways by passing laws, legislation against the judgments that they have passed, or for example, using the ED to raid the opposition parties, arrest the chief ministers, arrest the leaders. There also the courts were quite soft on that. So you have a systematic attack on all forms of opposition and federalism, and you don't allow the state governments to function. And if the bills are not passed for 3 years, 4 years, so that means the term of the government is over. That is, and there also the courts have actually allowed it. So I don't see this issue of the speeches being edited coming to court, because there were far serious issues which had to come to court, which where also we did not see any real result. If they had got a proper result from the court and resolution, then you would have seen that these problems diminish. But these problems are actually going to increase, in my view.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and watch what happens ultimately in the case. But surely the federal governance has become a casualty already. Now, with elections round the corner, what more politics are we going to see with the governor's office? We'll have to wait and watch. Thank you so much, Javed Ansari ji. Thank you very much, Pranav. Thank you very much for joining on the Federal. Thank you.